Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matters to you.
For the record.
Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to all of our listeners today. Those of you who are making the morning commute to work, those of you who are listening overseas, those who are at home just simply relaxing, having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. Welcome to For the Record. I'm your host, Orit Connor, also known as OC, and I trust that you all had an enjoyable weekend. We should also remember, and if you were listening earlier, you would have heard the Premier's remarks in relation to the hurricane season. Hurricane season started yesterday, June 1st. We all need to be prepared. And like I said, the season officially started yesterday. Now, while the forecast for hurricanes for this year, the numbers are reported to be fairly low, we want to also bear in mind that hurricane forecasting is not an exact science. And as a result of that, we can expect anything. But the key is being prepared. We should then heed all of the warnings and the advice given by our hazard management, Cayman. And we should listen carefully to the radio. We talk about having travel documents prepared in the event that travel is required. Medications should be in place. Have all of your necessary supplies, food, water. You want to ensure that you have restocked your stocks from one year to the other to ensure that they're still edible. On our last show on Friday, there were a few calls and concerns expressed in relation to two issues. One was the flag and the condition of the flag at the police station, and I'm happy to say that we have conveyed that information over to the protocol office, and I am made to understand that the police command has been in touch with all of their stations to ensure that all flags that are flying are in excellent condition. I have not been able to get any information in relation to the tent that is reportedly set up opposite Dairy Queen in Georgetown, but I undertake to get information on that as well. I also would like to talk about the issue of justices of the peace and notary publics. I've done some research in relation to justices of the peace, and I should also point out that the list of justices of the peace can also be found on the government's website, which is www.gov.ky. The list which was updated on the 31st of March 2013, so that it is current up to that date, lists 196 justices of the peace for the various districts. I have not been able to get a breakdown by district, but my cursory look at that list shows that there is certainly ample distribution of justices of the peace throughout the islands. Saying that, I also believe that that list probably needs to be updated slightly, as there are several names on that list that probably need to be removed because they are deceased. As far as the government website is concerned, my opinion also is that needs some serious updating. There is information on the government website that is not current, and we have to bear in mind that the general public will rely on the government website for information. So it is extremely important that that site is current and has correct information on it. Of course, there's the little man on the street who does not have access to computers, may not have a smartphone as well. So we have to ensure that the proper information gets out to them as well. Also bear in mind that many of the justices of the peace are senior civil servants, current and former members of the Legislative Assembly. They're also prominent members from each electoral district. So if you have an opportunity, familiarize yourself with that list in the event that you need the services of a justice of the peace. As I pointed out earlier, justices of the peace do not charge for their services, whereas notaries public do charge for their services. There is also a list of notaries public on the government website, and that list currently contains about 535 names on there. Now you may wonder why so many notaries public and not as many justices of the peace, and I would speculate that notaries public are appointed for reasons other than justices of the peace. There are documentation that need to be notarized. For instance, in the United States of America, they're more familiar with justices of the peace than they are with our British common law system, where we have justices of the peace. So you will find documents that are required to be certified in the United States will require that a notary's public certify them. Many businesses, law firms, accounting firms will have notaries public who are appointed and who reside within that particular business. And like I said earlier, notaries public are allowed to charge fees for their services. They do pay a $500 annual fee for their notary's public license, so they're allowed to charge a fee as well. Let me take this opportunity also to remind you that the show, For the Record, we start at 7:30 and we go until 9 o'clock. This is our 1 week anniversary, and I guess in politics 1 week is a long time. This is our 1 week anniversary. We start at 7:30 and we go until 9. We have been getting calls after 9 o'clock because people do believe that the show runs beyond 9 o'clock. We're looking at that because we have found that in the hour and a half that we have for the show, about 25 minutes of that hour and a half is actually dedicated or are actually dedicated to commercials. So we need to get more talk time in. And as a result, we will probably be looking to extending either to 9:30, hopefully to 10 o'clock. And Radio Cayman also needs to make money, so we have to have the commercial breaks in there. And talking about Radio Cayman and making money, one of the topics of discussion eventually will be government's divestment of certain assets, and we need to talk about the value of Cayman, Radio Cayman, how valuable it is to our residents, to our visitors, and to Caymanians in particular. This is Cayman Islands' premier radio station, the first radio station to be in the Cayman Islands. It must remain in the hands of the Cayman government as a means of getting information out to the public. And while being a government entity, At the same time, it is not necessarily dedicated to the government or the politicians who are in power, but it is a radio station that is available to all. The toll-free number for the record is 1-800-534-8255 or 949-8037. We also have an alternate number, 949-6990. Remember, we go on until 9 o'clock in the morning for now. When we do expand that period of time, we will alert you to that. But if you have calls that you want to make, call in early because we will leave the lines open for you to call at any point in time, and we will take your calls. We will interrupt the conversation to take your calls because we believe that your calls are important. We're going to take a short break at this point in time. When I come back, I will tell you who our guests for this morning will be. And welcome back to For the Record. Today, we have as our guests the Honorable Premier Alden McLaughlin here again with us today. Also, the Honorable Marco Archer, Minister of Finance. And we will continue our discussion and explanation on the 2014-2015 Cayman Islands budget. Gentlemen, welcome to For the Record. Now that the 2014-2015 budget has become a public document, and the throne speech, the budget address, as well as the policy statement have been delivered, you are no doubt now better positioned to discuss in greater detail the particular aspects of the budget. Mr. Premier, we'd like you to start out, and again, welcome back to For the Record.
Yes, good morning, OC. Good morning to the listening and viewing public. I gather we're being broadcast by CIG TV today as well, so we have to be on our best behavior and try to look our best as well. Good morning. Yes, when I came here last Monday morning, I think it was, I could only sort of give a glimpse into what the budget was going to provide for. But we've delivered it, as you said, and we've now had, I think, 7 members of the House who have actually debated the budget. We go back this morning to resume the debate on the budget, which I hope we'll get completed before the end of the week. I think most people would have been aware of some of the key initiatives of the budget. I gave a hint last Monday that we were seeking to give a range of breaks with respect to government fees and so forth, and that there would be something in the budget for the civil service. I don't know that I need to say very much about the civil service. What may I call it? Bonus payment or whatever, because I think most of them are very well aware.
I think the public would probably want to know what it entails, if it's just a one-off or whether or not it'll continue annually.
Right. Well, the situation we were faced with respect to the civil service has gone for many years now without any salary increases, not even increments. And the 3.2% cost of living adjustment, which had been made some years before, was taken away during the last administration on the basis that government finances were so tight that government salaries of civil servants had to be rolled back. Then it was given back for a year, and then it was taken back in the following year when it was found that the amount of the increase was unsustainable and the government budget couldn't manage it. So we were and are very concerned at the situation with civil servant salaries and the level of stagnation that there is, and how that impacts their ability to live and to purchase things in the economy, and also it significantly affects morale. So we had hoped really that we would have been able to make some sort of permanent increase in civil servant salaries, but the reality is that with the civil service numbers in terms of personnel being where they are, and with the limits on operational expenditure, particularly with respect to the personnel within government. There was just no way that we could do that this year because the civil service numbers in terms of personnel came in at about $8.6 million over the budget. So we knew civil servants would be very disappointed by this, and as I said, we wanted to do something for the public service. The deputy governor had written to us asking for us to give back the 3.2%. But the reality is, when we looked at the budget numbers, it was just not possible. And what we certainly don't want to do is to fall into the trap of the last administration and give the civil service something and then have to take it back again. That is just devastating and creates a sense of uncertainty and worry within the public service and the broader public as well. So we looked to see what we could do. And the reality is that with the efforts of the civil service, we have achieved significant savings in terms of operational expenditure, particularly with respect to personnel expenditure in the current year, the 2013-2014 budget year. And so we looked at what we were able to do there and determined that we could safely, without creating any issues for ourselves as the administration, give the civil service what amounts to 2.5% of their annual salary, which will be paid to them in this month's at the same time as this month's paycheck, that is the end of June. So all of the feedback that we've gotten has been very positive, even from the private sector, because I think discerning people in the private sector understand that the more money that the civil service has in their hands, the more that they are likely to spend in the economy and to purchase from the various private sector businesses and so forth.
Yeah, more purchasing power.
So
Yes.
so that's where we're at. The reality, which I've spoken about many times, is that unless we find a way to reduce the overall cost of the civil service, indeed the public service, in the longer term, we are going to continue to face real challenges to be able to continue to pay civil servants the salaries which they really warrant and deserve, and to make increases when that is also warranted, when civil servants deserve it, when there are promotions. And so we have to find a way to, what we were talking about, right sizing the civil service in a way that is carefully thought through and which has as little negative impact as we possibly can on persons' lives and aspirations, but gets the civil service to a size where it becomes manageable and where government can year on year do what it ought to do with respect to the performance of civil servants.
Thank you. Minister Archer, I want to personally congratulate you on the job that you're doing so far as Minister of Finance. I think the public has displayed an enormous amount of confidence in you. I know that in friendly circles you're known to be a frugal person and certainly quite discerning in terms of how you spend your money, and you're certainly bringing that to the job. And I want to personally congratulate you for the job you've done so far.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. Thank you. I live by the principle that you should treat other people's money better than you treat your own. So I've brought that same discipline to government's finances. You cannot spend the same dollar twice. So make sure that when you spend it, you get absolute best value for money. And that's what the government needs to do, not just now, but years to come into the future, and what we should have been doing all along.
There are various questions that the public will put forward in relation to the budget. The Premier and I discussed the two areas of non-compliance with the principles of responsible financial management, and they are the debt service ratio and the cash reserves. What is the UK's position in relation to those two areas of non-compliance, and do they realize that it takes time, that you have to gradually get yourself back to the point?
Yeah, the UK does realize that this is something that has to be done over a number of years, and as a result of that, we have until the 30th of June 2016 to achieve the compliance with those various ratios. With respect to the debt to the debt to GDP ratio, I think is what it was.
Right.
Yes. No, sorry, debt service ratio of 10%. We are currently at 11.3%, or we will be at the end of this fiscal year, 14-15. We will be at 11.3%, and we have to get down to 10%. So we have another, you could call it 24 months from where we are today, 2014 to 2016, in order to achieve that 10%. And it is very much doable given the path on which we have been proactively looking for ways of reducing our debt burden. Some of those loans will be coming due in this current fiscal year, or the fiscal year that we're coming to, 14-15. So we'll be dealing with those, retiring some of those debt, and that should help to reduce our debt service ratio even further below the current or the projected 11.3%. With respect to cash days, our target is 90 days of operational expenditure. We should have that amount of money on reserve. We are forecasted to be at this December, because it's measured as at the 31st of December each year. So as at the end of the 31st December 2014, we're projecting that we will be at 43.3 days, and we have until the December 31st 2015 to achieve the 90 days, given that the magical date then at which they would assess this compliance with these various ratios is June 2016. Now, if you're saying you're at 43 and you have to reach 90, how easy is that? Well, I'd just like to point out that last year this time we were at 6.5 days. So we are making great pace. And in fact, as we reduce our debt burden, of course, then that's even more money to put aside for cash reserves for cash days. And as the economy continues to improve and we continue to remain fiscally prudent, then of course we are able to put aside even more money to achieve that. So I'm confident, I'm hopeful, I have faith that by the grace of God we will achieve this, because there are many people who are praying for the government, praying for the country, and I think that with all things, faith in God, you can accomplish it. And that's the way in which I'm approaching this. Not anything of myself or any of my colleagues, but faith in God. That's the only way we're going to bring this country back to where it should be.
We certainly have to stick with our Christian ideals, our Christian upbringing, and we keep pointing, and it's engraved in our Constitution as well, that we are a God-fearing Christian community. Should also point out that while there are 2 areas of non-compliance, that there are several areas that you are in compliance as well. So we should highlight the positives as well as the negative as far as that is concerned. We had one caller on the line. That caller is going to call back after 8 o'clock. In a few minutes, we're going to break for the news. Just a short period for the news, and we will be coming back. But when we come back, we will also be discussing the raft of legislative measures that are also included in the budget. And what I'd like to look at with that is that how many of those legislative measures, when passed, will impact on you achieving the targets that have been set in the budget in relation to revenues and expenditures as well. Folks, remember that you're listening to For the Record. The numbers are toll-free, 1-800-534-8255 or 949-8037. Alternatively, you can call on 949-6990. Stay tuned to those dials. If you're on your morning commute to work, continue to listen. And if you get into the office and your employer allows you to have a radio or to listen to streaming audio, please do so. If you're having difficulties with streaming audio, please let us know so that we can rectify the situation. We will be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to For the Record. I have as my guest Honorable Premier Alden McLaughlin and Honorable Marco Archer, Minister of Finance. I'm told that we have one caller in the line, so we're going to go straight to that caller. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Miss. Can I call you OC?
Yes, you can.
Good morning. And good morning to your panel, the Premier and Mr. Archer, I think it is.
That's correct.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
This is John Thompson. I'm quite sure you have heard my name here and there lately. What I'm calling in regards to this morning, I was listening to the speech by the governor, and she mentioned water, how sufficient fresh water to drink. I just asking a question. If you was having a bad weather, would the water companies put on water for those homes that doesn't have any water to save some water and then, I guess, shut them back down later? Is that going to be in the making if anything was to happen here, hurricane-wise, and the homes that doesn't have sufficient water, would the companies put the water on and let them pump so much into drums and whatever, and then turn them back off? That's just a question. And I know you guys know that I'm doing a water drive.
Yes, I do.
Yes. And I took it upon myself with me and God and my heart. Didn't realize it was going to be such a big thing. And the Flowers Group was the first one who picked me up, and I had a lot of side sponsors came along. Flowers has ended this Saturday gone. Now Foster's has picked me up. And I'm going to do it for a few weeks for the month of June. And after that, I will discontinue doing the water because it's not an easy task. I enjoy it, but it's very heavy. It's a heavy load to carry. It's a one-man. Gentleman asked me the other day what's the name of my organization. I told him the one-man organization.
John, question for you. Is there a way to be able to identify those clients that you have so that a closer look can be taken at them individually if they're prepared for their information to be divulged to others who might be able to assist in one way or the other? How can we get that information so that we can look at each individual to see what can be done for them, to see what the problems are in relation to their water being disconnected, how long the bills have gone for, to see what advice and counseling can be given to those people to get them back on the right track. Premier, I think you had a question also.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask John how widespread her program is. Is it in all of the districts, or is it just Georgetown and the Savannah area? And like how many persons, how many households you're helping?
Yeah. Well, also to your first question, I would have to get approval from the people when I see them again this coming Saturday. You there?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to get approval from the people next Saturday. Do the information and see if they'll give me some, or just get a contact number from them and give it to, I guess, you guys, so you can contact them, whatever. I'm not fully sure how that works. I tell you what, Mr. Premier, I started this water drive on the 3rd of May. And from the 3rd of May up until this Saturday gone here, my first water drive was, it was a 16 count of families came up for the water. And then the following week, we went to 22 families. The third week, we went to 32 families. And then we went on to 36 families and 39 families. And now, this coming week here, we got 40 for next Saturday. 40 people, 40 families for next Saturday.
And John, what is it that you provide them? Is it just drinking water?
Yes. What happened at first going off? Flowers Group offered cistern water to clean cisterns, and I got 4 cisterns with water for the month of May, and I've been providing them also with drinking water. It's drinking water that they come into the stop at the spot stop to pick up. And this is a wide something. It's going into West Bay. It's going to East End, North Side, Georgetown, and up here in the Savannah and Bottomtown area. So it's a widespread. And to tell you, I'm not going to put my head on no chopping block for anyone, but from what I can gather, it's all seems to be very real and genuine people that is coming to this water.
Okay.
And I'm giving out, like next week, I have to give out about 40 cases of water. So I cannot give the amount I will out to give because in some homes got like all 6, 8, 9 grandchildren in it with the grandparents, and I try to give them sufficient. When I say sufficient, insufficient, and insufficient. You understand? It's a starter.
Right.
They have to really try to help get the rest that they would need for the week. So this is going on every Saturday from the 3rd of May. And I think I'm going to do it for another 3 to 4 weeks down here in this month of June. And I get so emotional when I have to talk about it.
Well, you're to be commended for identifying the need and actually almost single-handedly making an effort to do something about it. I know that that those people must be eternally grateful to you for taking this measure, and I want to commend you.
And John,
Asking and a lot of questions. Yes, O.C.?
Yeah, John, what I'm going to say is that we need to talk more about this and get as much information from you as possible. And we will, if you can leave your details with Susan, she will take your contact number. We will be in touch with you to see how this can be further coordinated and to see how we can determine exactly what the needs are, whether or not some people are living in apartments, whether they're living in their own private homes. But we're going to ask you to leave us here for now. We're going to take that information and we're going to go to our next caller. Caller, good morning. You're on For the Record, not Talk Today. For the Record. You're on For the Record. Go right ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Connor and the Premier and Mr. Archer.
Good morning, Mom. Good morning.
It's something I want to find out about the pension people getting the money, that retraction money, and how long it would be given, because some people are saying that it's for 1 month or only the month of June, and I would like to know because pension people should be able to get it. They're the ones need it.
Thank you, Mom. Yes, Mom. We were just waiting to ensure that you had completed the question. The stimulus, or let me put it this way, sorry. The one-time gratuitous payment to civil servants, it was meant for just the employees of the central government. It did not include pension payments. The country could not afford that at this time, and that is one of the arguments that the UK, well, not the arguments, but that is one of the issues that the UK is constantly saying to us, that you have your civil service is too large, you're spending too much of your revenue on funding liabilities, and therefore at this time what we were trying to do is to create as much of a stimulus to the economy by giving this money to the civil servants. But as well, we also thought we would try to help them cope with the cost of it, or the rising cost of living, due to the fact that they had not gotten a pay increase for quite some time. We could not afford to give pensioners an increase, and it's unfortunate, but that's the reality of our financial situation.
When we get to a position where we can actually give back or cost of living adjustment, then everybody's income, everybody's salary or pension will be affected. But this was a one-time, essentially a gratuity paid on the basis of the performance of the civil service in achieving and doing better than the targets that we had established with respect to both expenditure and revenue. So the elected members did get it, pensioners didn't get it, those who work in the statutory authorities and government-owned companies didn't get it. It's just the core civil service.
Thanks for that, Premier. I believe that Jan Thompson has rejoined us. She wants to say a few more words. Jan, go right ahead.
Yes, OC.
Go right ahead.
Yes, OC. You there?
Yes, we are. Go.
What I am concerned about, OC, is I don't know where it comes from in me, but I strongly believe that we're going to have a water problem in this Cayman Islands in years to come, because if we, as the Caymanians, cannot pay our water bills as it is now, and if the water ever goes up any higher and the place will be purchased later on, we need a backup system here in the Cayman Islands for people who cannot afford to buy the state of water. Or see, they took out our cisterns and they took out our wells. And I strongly believe, and I will fight until I die, for some system to come in here that we can go and get water. It can be monitored by whoever the government wants to put there, but we need a system. We need either pipeline in each district or cisterns built in a certain place, and it's being monitored. It's hooked up to the rainwater. When there's no rainwater coming, we can go to the reservoir, whatever it is up in East End, and pump water in that system that people can have to wash with and clean and so forth, and then we can buy our drinking water, hopefully from the grocery stores that are coming from the U.S. But I would like to see some water system put here for us Caymanians that cannot afford the state of water. I'm not knocking the state of water companies, not for 1 second, but I'm looking out for my Caymanians that are hurting desperately for water, and no one should be short or despite of water. We need our water. So the day that they brought this to the water into our island and took away our cisterns and our wells and talk about deep wells not got the ground contaminated, that ain't the Caymanian fault. We need water. Our children need electricity. Our children need water. Our children need food. They need to be calm and selective. If they can't sleep at night and have a belly full and water to drink, how can they get education in school? Our children is failing us because of the way we are not taking great care of them, because we cannot support them the way we would like to, because the cost of living is extremely high and our children are punishing.
Caller, we certainly need to identify the more vulnerable in our society, those who are genuinely in need. We have to find a way of identifying them. I am sure that the Department of Children and Family Services would have information in that regard. Of course, getting information from them requires the consent of the person who's affected by it, but it certainly would be a condemnation of the Cayman Islands and our society if the most vulnerable amongst us are not helped. So we have to be able to do that, and then we have to come up with solutions as to how we provide for those. But I will place the emphasis on those who are most vulnerable, those who are genuinely in need, as opposed to those who are taking advantage of a situation. And I'm not saying that to blemish anyone, but at the same time, in order to address the issue, we have to be able to identify those persons who are in need. Thank you very much, caller. We have 2 more callers on the line, so we want to take them as well, because as you know, our time is short here for now. Caller, welcome to For the Record. Go right ahead, please.
Hi. Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I have a question for the Premier.
Yes, sir.
This is Mark Henningsen.
Yes, sir.
Premier, this 36 megawatts of power, diesel-generated power that we're about to sign up on, I want to get your position on that. Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? If you think it's good, tell us why. If you think it's bad, tell us why.
Well, I've heard you in a discourse with, I think it was the elected member from East End on the other show. I'm a little bit reluctant to engage in a discussion at that level, because I don't have that technical knowledge and background with respect to it. What I do know though, is that the process and the license that CUC currently has provides, and the legislation that is now in place requires them to tender for the provision of additional generation or capacity to generate electricity. And the tenders, I understand, went out, and the tenders have been bid on, and the process has taken its course. I don't know what we could do at this stage to change that. I mean, there obviously we do need to move towards a system where there is the generation of electricity is a lot cheaper than is currently the case, and that is certainly something that the government is focusing on. But we do have a CUC that's been in operation for a number of years. They are operating in accordance with a license that they have, and under the current electricity law. So I don't know that there is, unless you are saying to me that something has not been done in accordance with either the license or the law, I don't know that there's anything we can do at this stage to change the process. With respect to this particular 36 megawatts of which you speak.
Are you there, caller?
Yeah, I'm here. I would like to respond to that.
Go right ahead.
Sure.
Yes, Premier, are you telling me because of the process, you are willing to allow this country to to enter into an agreement that's going to tie this country? 36 megawatts, sir, is half the power we use every day.
But Mr. Hennings, what I want you to appreciate is that it's not what I prepared to do. Even government has to operate in accordance with the law, and even government has to honor contractual arrangements. What I'm saying to you is that unless you are saying to me that the current, that somehow the process is outside the legislation and outside the terms of the license, there really is nothing that government can do to interfere with the process which is set out in those two, by virtue of those two mechanisms.
Premier, can I speak? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yes, okay. So, Premier, you're telling me because a poor decision was made in the past that's going to hobble this country for 20 years, you haven't signed the agreement with these PPAs. Because the process has been followed, we are going to go down this road. Is that what you're telling me, sir?
I am telling you that even government has to operate within the law, and even government has to honor contractual arrangements. If we don't, we'll be in breach, and we'll be susceptible to challenge in the courts, just like any other entity. Government is not immune, and government can't just say, well, we don't like this agreement, so we tear it up, or we don't like what the law is now, so we're not going to follow it. That's all I'm saying to you, sir.
Really? I mean, come on. The agreement has not been signed. We have not signed.
Which agreement, sir?
The power purchase agreement with these two firms.
Yes, but what I'm saying to you is the process by which you get there is a process that is set out in the law and in the license which CUC has with government. So that's what I was saying to start, unless you are saying to me that somehow that process which is set out in the legislation or in the license has not been properly followed, there's not anything government can do to say, well, we don't like the arrangement now, so therefore we're not going to honor it.
What? We haven't signed anything. When you sign the paper, the deal is done. Before you sign it, it's not a deal.
You're missing my point, Mr. Hennings. The agreement to which I speak is the license which CUC has with the Cayman Islands government, which sets in train all of the other processes, and the electricity law which governs the whole arrangement. Those are in place and have been in place for many years.
Mr. McLaughlin, I've had the pleasure of reading the 120 pages. Clause 6 of the agreement between CUC and ourselves says that they need permission from the ERA on anything they do.
Mm-hmm. And the ERA is the
ERA has not given them permission.
Right.
So stop it now.
But I can't stop the ERA. The ERA is established by law, and the ERA has certain powers under the law. The fact that I'm premier doesn't give me the authority to say to them, don't follow the law. or don't, or that I should interfere, or that I have the ability to interfere with their decision-making process.
Well, I'm going to go to church today, and I'm going to pray to God to stop this, because apparently you can't stop it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, caller. We have one more caller on the line. We're going to take that caller before we go to a short break. Caller, welcome to For the Record.
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Hello.
Hello, go right ahead.
Yes, I would like to ask the Premier, why can't they get somebody to find out, to do some research in this country, find out about what is causing all of this cancer in this island?
Well, what I can say to you is, and we announced that in the budget address. Good morning, by the way. Sorry, is that we are bringing legislation to the House in the upcoming fiscal year to formally establish a cancer registry, and to require that doctors do report the incidence of cancer as and when they become aware of it. And the purpose of that is to get that data, to be able to compile a proper database, and to be able to make a proper analysis of the incidence of cancer and the various types of cancer which tend to be prevalent in Cayman, as a real first step to seeing how we can deal with it, to see whether or not what most people believe, which is that it is a really high rate, is real, and see how that compares with other countries, but like the UK or the United States in particular, and to see what we can do, how much of this is lifestyle, how much of it is perhaps something else.
We can't compare this with the U.S. or UK. This is a little small country.
Thank you very much, caller. Unfortunately, we have to pay some bills, and we're going to take a short break and be right back to For the Record. Thanks for listening in. Stay tuned. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Orit Connor, also known as OC. I have as my guests today the Honorable Premier, Alden McLaughlin, and the Honorable Minister of Finance, Marco Archer. We had several interesting calls. Unfortunately, time does not allow us to continue extended conversations at this point. Hopefully, we will be able to do that later on as the show progresses. We, Minister and Premier, we talked about two items. One, the proposed legislative measures for 2014-2015. There is a list of about 50 proposed legislative changes. We also want to talk about the reduction on diesel for CUC and the time frame when that will come into effect, and the criticism that has been raised by some in relation to that particular time frame. I believe the public is going to be more interested in hearing about the reduction in fuel on diesel for CUC as opposed to the legislative changes. And since we have a short period of time before we wrap up, I'd like you to address that for our listening audience.
Well, I think perhaps because we went through this on Friday on another show, I think perhaps the best thing for me to do is to ask the Minister of Finance to deal with the technical reasons behind the timing, and then I could talk more generally about our approach to this.
Certainly, Minister Archer.
Thank you. Mr. Connor, the reason for the timing, of course, is that, one, our economy is just starting to gain some traction. And at the end of the day, what we cannot afford is for the country to slip backwards. So we have to try and do this we have to do this incrementally. Our measures, our stimulus measures were both specific and measured. They were targeted. We tried to find those measures that would be most impactful in terms of helping the economy move forward. The reduction on diesel was one of those. As to why it is time for January as opposed to July is we're trying to manage our cash flow. We're trying to manage our cash flow. We have debt to service. We have various expenses to meet, and at the end of the day, July to December is the slowest period in government's revenues. So during that time, we had to be careful not to give up too much of our revenue. Hence the reason for January of the new year. Now, we've heard that some people are most unhappy with that, but at the end of the day, the government will be losing $8.4 million of revenue by that measure. And we had to choose carefully as to when we started to lose that money. We're also giving the other incentives, which start July 1st, which even though those are reductions in government revenue, we are hoping that they are a stimulus and therefore keep the economy going or get it going, so that come January, when we start to lose the diesel revenue, the other revenue can compensate, as the economy would have, hopefully picked up and grown somewhat during that time.
That is certainly a fair explanation. Of course, people are saying that we're into the hot months when consumption is going to be raised, which is during the summer months. From January on, you're looking at the cooler months when you can have your windows open, so you don't have to use your air conditioning. But people also have to bear in mind that they have to cut back on their consumption. They given by CUC, while CUC is in the business of making money, they also try to advise people on how to conserve energy as well. So it is important for us to look on our consumption patterns, and we should then vary those according to our abilities during that period of time.
That's absolutely right, OC. And I just want to add one thing, which is really an extension of what Minister Archer said, is that our approach to this budget, given the financial position of the Cayman Islands government, given the state of the economy and the challenges we know that most people in this country are facing with cost of living and so forth, is to try to strike a balance. We have to continue to get government finances back on a solid footing, where we no longer have the oversight of the UK, where we're in full compliance with all of the various ratios and principles set out in the Public Management and Finance Law. Because a government that is on sound financial footing inspires confidence in terms of the economy by investors and so forth, help to move the economy forward. The recovery of the global economy is still a little uncertain, a little fragile. We saw a slipping back of the US's economy in the first quarter of this year. It was marginal, but it was not. It was the first time in 3 years that there hasn't been actual growth in one of the quarters. So things are still not as positive as everyone would like. We are projected to have a very solid surplus in the current year, which ends at the end of this month, and we are projected $108 million. We're projecting about 128 for the next budget year. But we have to exercise a certain level of caution. With the UK's oversight, there's also a limit on what we can do without starting to cause concerns there. I'm speaking now specifically about giving up revenue. So we have developed a range of measures, or concessions, if I may call them that we are hoping we'll be able to implement over the course of this term. These are, as I said in my address, these are first steps. The concessions that we've granted, the diesel, the reduction in import duty from 22 to 20% for licensed traders, if I may call them that. The concessions we're granting with respect to trade and business licenses and so forth. We will carefully monitor how well the budget performs against projections in this fiscal year, and we are hopeful that we may be able to increase the level of concessions in the next budget cycle without creating any shocks, without creating any major problems, because what we don't want to do is to make concessions, see a significant shortfall in revenue, and then have to scramble and impose new fees, which is what happened in the last administration. Over what people need to appreciate is in the last term, some $200+ million in additional fees and taxes were added to the budget to make up the revenue. So to make the revenue that was necessary. So we are proceeding with caution, sensitive really as we are to people's needs and concerns and the pressing need to reduce the cost of living as much as possible. But we have to do it in a careful, cautious way that is sustainable in the long term, and not something that we give you a concession this year and next year we have to add a new fee or tax.
So if we see, for instance, in the first quarter or the first 2 quarters of the next financial year, that the economy actually starts to overperform and you find that your budget figures are actually overperforming, would you say then that you would make any adjustments, or you would let it run the full financial year to see exactly where you are? Because if you are only 6 months into it and you see that it's overperforming, you're still not certain what's going to happen in the next 6 months. Now, there would be some with expectations to say, well, if we're seeing improvements, then maybe we can revisit some of the measures that we have taken. For instance, is that possible?
I think, and I'll let the Minister of Finance speak because he's the expert on this, but let me just say my 2 cents worth. Is I always believe in this, is that one swallow does not a summer make. You know, we have to look at the performance of the budget in the overall, and even 1 year is not perhaps a long enough period, but we do have to take some measures, and we can't be too cautious that we wind up doing nothing. But we would want to be sure that the budget is performing well over the full cycle, rather than looking simply at 6 months, because a whole lot can happen in the next 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll let Minister Archer speak.
Yeah, just to say that, I would prefer that we not move any further beyond what we've done until we've seen the full effects of this year's budget. So perhaps if the economy should perform the way we anticipate, given the various measures that we've put in place, then perhaps next year, July, we would then, if the UK is in agreement, reduce the rate on diesel even further. So then people would have the reduction during the summer months. But we have to ensure that we don't start counting our chickens before the eggs hatch. It would be foolhardy to do so.
Do you think that the UK is actually setting a double standard in relation to its overseas territories and in particular, let's talk about Cayman and what they want us to do as opposed to what they are doing in the UK? Because we see where they're asking us to hold back, to tighten our belts. They have actually been pumping money into the UK economy. Yes, the whole issue of contingent liability is there, but I believe that is more fictional than fact. And I say that simply because since the 1970s, the Cayman Islands have not received any budgetary aid from the United Kingdom. So if we're looking at historical trends, you would say it hasn't happened, it could happen, but if over the years from the mid-1970s, it hasn't happened. Cut us a little bit more slack. Allow us to do a little bit more.
Well, yeah, that's not how they perceive it at all, though, because unfortunately, those kinds of distinctions rarely get made as far as the people who vote in the UK are concerned. So they lump all of the overseas territories together, and so they see what occurred in Montserrat, which the UK is still funding. Not saying there's any fault of the Montserratians. You know, they had
a natural disaster.
Natural disaster, but the reality is that the UK is underwriting it. You see what happened in the Turks and Caicos Islands, and the UK had to underwrite that. So they lump us all together, and the UK government themselves, who are elected, I think a lot of time we forget that they are accountable to voters as well, to an electorate as well, and so what they are trying to. This is my assessment over the course, based on experience over the course of quite a number of years now, and more recently with sort of direct involvement and discussions with the minister and the FCO officials there, is that they are determined to create a system which produces as little risk as possible to them. And actually, I think that where we are now, we should just hurry up and comply, get them off our back, so that we don't have to be whining about what the UK is making us do or not do. If we meet the targets that are set, if we come back in full compliance with the ratios under the law, we'll have a much more robust system, one which is able to withstand global shocks, because we'll have good reserves, we'll have low, relatively speaking, we'll have low debt compared to our revenue and to our GDP and so forth. But also it takes the UK out of the picture. As long as we are operating within those parameters, we are able to make all of the policy decisions that we need to make. So the view that we have taken collectively is, let's hurry up and meet these expectations. Let's get the reserves where we need them to be. Let's get the debt service ratio where we need it to be. Let's get the debt down to where we need it to be. And that gives the government then a much freer rein to make policy decisions.
And do we believe that we need any additional legislative measures to keep this government, future governments, in check afterwards, to ensure that we remain compliant with whatever parameters that have been set in legislation?
Well, I don't think we need any more. I think we have more legislative measures than we need in some instances. The challenge for us last time round was this: the government's policies with respect to borrowing and so forth were based on projections which, quite frankly, didn't realize. And then, of course, along came late 2007, 2008. The bottom fell out of the global financial system, and governments all over the world found themselves in crisis. I mean, for us, because everything's based so much on revenue, government's revenues fell off precipitously, which threw all of the ratios completely out. What we didn't have, which we absolutely are working hard to do, is we didn't have a big enough reserve fund. And one of the measures that we have put in place is a plan to constantly build general reserves to a point where we have the means, even when government revenues fall off precipitously, as they did the last time round, to be able to continue to fund the business of government. Because if you have huge savings, as is the case in Jersey, you can manage for a much longer period without creating any shock. So that's where I think we have to move, because almost everything in Cayman is based on what happens internationally. You have a financial services industry which is driven by what happens internationally, good or bad, and the other pillar is tourism. If people don't come, we're in trouble, and that's precisely what happened to us the last time round. So we are looking at ways to make ourselves more resilient, and part of that exercise must be, which is what we're working on, must be diversification of our economy, so that even when the international markets aren't as active as we need them to be, there is still a steady source of income and revenue to the local economy.
Thanks for that, Premier. We're getting close to the close of our show. I'm going to use this as a wrap-up period. Minister Archer, any final words that you want to pass on?
No, sir.
Premier, anything you want to add to what you said?
OC, I think my observation is that this hour and a half really flies by very, very swiftly, and perhaps, is it hour and a half, 7:30?
Hour and a half, yes.
Yeah. Perhaps you may need to, and the management may need to look at a little longer?
I think we're going to do that this week. We want to really look at that because I think now we probably have people calling in after 9 o'clock thinking that the show is going to continue on. The show is certainly proving to be informative. I think we're exceeding our expectations at this point in time, and I hope we continue to do that. So we certainly, management is listening, and we will sit down and look at the time frames and certainly expand those. Remember, you're listening to For the Record. My guests this morning were the Honorable Premier Alden McLaughlin and Honorable Marco Archer, Minister of Finance. I leave you again with these words. Remember that we are our brother's keeper. Each of us should seek to perform a random act of kindness today. Help those and care for those who are the most vulnerable in our society. Be good to your neighbors. Treat them right. Treat yourself right. And have a great day. Thanks for listening. Tune in again on Wednesday morning at 7:30 when we will have the members from East End and the North Side present on our show. Thanks for listening and good day.